Hi, my great students out there. It's so great to have you once more watch our video, the UTME series. Last week, we talked a lot on standard form, and I guess I gave you some quizzes. Did you try those quizzes? It's so exciting to see all your results coming out from those quizzes, but then there must be a result. All displayed on the screen are the result of the quizzes that was given to you last time. I guess you can see it on the screen. Today is going to be a great day because today we are going to discuss another interesting topic that appears most often in your JAM exams, and that is sword. When you check your JAM exams, you see that sword appears like 3 times. You have 3 questions in sword in your JAM exam. And guess what? If you can be able to solve those 3 questions, you have a 6 marks. Sure, it's 6 marks. And that's an added marks to the marks you acquire in your JAM exams. Today we're going to look at sword, and at the end of this lesson, I promise you, you're going to learn 2 things. You're going to learn how to carry out various operations in sword, be it addition, be it subtraction, be it division. And the greatest of all, you're going to learn how to simplify and rationalize sword. But to start with, look at the screen and you're going to see the challenge question for this topic. Can you solve those questions? Difficult they may seem to be, but then I want to promise you that at the end of this video, they can be very, very easy. I want you to sit down, watch this video to the end, and you are going to see the solutions to all these questions. Before we do that, let's see how we introduce ourselves to the topic for today. To start with, let's delve properly into the topic for today, which is sword. As an introduction, we can say sword are numbers written in root form. That is, when you have square root of x, they are used to express its exact value. Swords are irrational numbers, that is, numbers that cannot be written as a ratio or fractions. E.g., we can see people say you have root 2, root 7, square root of 12, etc. These are all swords, and they are mostly expressed as roots of rational numbers. Now, the intent of we solving sword is to make irrational numbers rational. So when we have such irrational numbers like the square roots we've been given, we can make them rational, and that is the essence of solving swords. Now we want to look at some keynotes. Under these keynotes, we are also going to analyze the rules that must guide us as we go about solving the sword questions. Now we want to look at rules. To go about solving to go about solving sword, there are techniques that must be followed in order to simplify these sword expressions. And they are: 1. When solving sword, 1, we need to rationalize the denominators. And this is done by eliminating the sword in the denominator. When we look at steps we'll be taking when solving, so we'll look at some of those rules that will come when solving swords. We are going to see in rule 3 and rule 4 and 5, we are going to see rationalization of the denominator being expressed and being done. Now I want you to take note of that. Now the second keynote we want to take note of is when we are asked to find the square root, the perfect square factor of large numbers. Now, to simplify sword, the largest possible perfect square factor of the number that is being square rooted is what we should endeavor to look for. Now, given for example square root of 98 as a sword, if you are giving the example as a sword, the largest perfect square factor of 98 is 49, which means that we can take the square root of 49 without even leaving a sword. Square root of 49 will give us a 9. So if we find a number we can multiply 49 with to give us 98, that will simplify that sword, square root of 98. I know you get that. Now I want to consider the third keynote, keynote 3. The 6 rules. Keynote 3 contains the 6 rules that should be considered when we perform operations on swords. And these rules are: 1. When we have combined the square root of x times y, it will be equal to the square root of x multiplied by the square root of y. Now, if we are asked as a good sample to simplify square root of 32, now looking at 32 properly, you come to find that the largest perfect square of 32 is 16. Now, what can we multiply by 16 to give us 32? You find out that it is 2, because 2 times 32 will give us a 16. So this time around, if we have the square root of combined 2 times 16, it was going to give us square root of 16 multiplied by square root of 2, and the result finally will be 4 root 2. So you see, when we apply that multiplication rule of sword, we can easily simplify that square root of 32. Now the second rule, rule 2, is when you have the division x over y as a square root. Now it will be equal to separately x, square root of x over square root of y. So if we look at that, we can easily simplify them using the rules we have understand in sword to find that value. Now we want to look at rule 3. Rule 3 has to do with the rationalization of sword. Now, rationalizing sword really implies multiplying the numerator and the denominator of that sword in question by the value of the denominator. Now, when we are given a value x over square root of y, it will be equal to x over square root of y multiplied by the square root of y all over the square root of y. Now, did you note that we multiply the numerator and denominator by the sword value, which is the denominator? All this is done simply just to simplify the denominator. So we will arrive at x square root of y over y, which we can easily break down using our normal simplification, the LCM, as we were taught in school then. Now we are going to look at rule 4. When you are given a larger denominator and you are asked to find the value, let's say we are given x over a plus b root y. The denominator is an addition of two values in which the other one is a sword. In this case, we also need to rationalize, and that denominator is called the conjugate of a sword. Now, when we are given this kind of value, we are asked to simplify. All we need to do is to multiply both the denominator and the numerator by the conjugate of that value, a plus b root y. And normally, the conjugate of that value will give us a minus b root y, which is the conjugate of a plus b root y. And this process of simplifying this is called the rationalization of the denominator. So if we rationalize, we'll have a value that we can easily simplify. Samples that will be taken will show you how to go about this. So do not panic at what we are doing for now. Now we are going to look at rule 5. Rule 5 is exact. Is a typical of rule 4. But this time around, the denominator is a negative value, and in this instance we need to look for the conjugate of that denominator. Now the conjugate of a minus b root y is going to give us a plus b root y, and in this instance, if we want to simplify, we need to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the conjugate of that sword, which is a plus b root y. By doing that, we can simplify further. Samples will be shown in this video, and that is why I urge you to stay locked in to the end of this video. We are going to solve those challenge questions we pose at the beginning of this video together. Now we want to look at the final rule, rule 6. Rule 6, when you are given a value x root c plus or minus y root c, it will be equal to x plus or minus y all root c. Now, how can we go about this? Look at this sample that is given to us. Let's say we are asked to simplify 3 root 2 plus 4 root 2. Now, do you notice that the roots are the same? Good. Now, when you have a value in which you have same roots, same square root, all you need to do is to add the external values and then put the square root in front of them. That rule is the simplest rule you can play alongside with, and it's very important for you to simplify such question. Now, these are the 6 rules you need to abide with when solving questions in Sword. Now, to go about this, I want you to note one thing. I found out that many students do have problems with getting the conjugate of a given sword. Especially conjugate of a sword, we used to know them as sword whose product results in a rational number. That is the definition of a conjugate of a sword. Now, if you have a sword and you multiply that sword with its conjugate, it should give you a rational number. Now, if I have square root of y plus square root of x, square root of x plus square root of y, it will be equal to the conjugate of that value will be square root of x minus square root of y. Now, if you notice that if you multiply the real sword and the conjugate of the sword, you are going to get the value x minus y, which is a rational number. So the following are shown to you are example of swords and their conjugate, as you can see on your screen. I want you to study this properly so that when you are given such similar swords, you can easily divine its conjugates without much issues. I want you to pay attention to that one, especially the second one. When you have minus 2 root 7 plus root 3, the conjugate will give you minus 2 root 7 minus root 3. So take note of this conjugate. We are going to be applying them as we solve a whole lot of questions under Surds. Now, without wasting much time, let's look at the first sample question for today. Sample question 1. Now, let's consider the first sample question for today's topic on Sword. Now, we are asked to simplify 98, square root of 98 minus square root of 50 divided by square root of 32. Now, if you notice, while we are taking the keynote, I told you whenever you are given any question on Sword, all you need to do is to find the largest perfect square of whatever number you are given. Now, you see that displayed here. Now, let's look at, we are given 3, we are given 98, we are given 50, and we are given 32. Now, you have to look for the perfect square of all these numbers. Now, the perfect square of 98, if you divide 98 by 2, what will you have? 9 divided by 2 will give you 4, remainder 1. 18 divided by 2 will give you 9. So you do notice that 2 times 49 can give you 98, and 49 is a perfect square. So that's the highest perfect square for 98. Now you do same with 50 and same with 2. Now if you do that, what are we going to have? We're going to have the square root of 2 multiplied by 49 minus square root of that will give you 25 times 2, or 2 times 25 to make things look similar, divided by square root of, the highest here will now be what? 2 times what? 16. All of these 25 and 16 can be getting following that little method I just taught you. It's a secret, and I want you to learn it. You can use it to get perfect square root of whatever number you want to get. Now let's look at that. We want to solve this, break this down further to get an absolute solution. Now, this will give us square root of 2 multiplied by square root of 49 minus square root of 2 multiplied by square root of what? 25. And that will be equal to, that will be divided by square root of 2 multiplied by square root of what? 16. Now, do you notice how we've been breaking it down? This is exactly what I want you to do whenever you're giving me a question on sword. Now, square root of 49 will give us, square root of 49 is going to give us a 7, right? So that will give you 7 root 2 minus square root of 25 is going to give us 5. That will be 5 root 2, right? Divided by square root of 16 is going to give you 4. So that will give you 4 root what? Root 2. Now, do you notice this, that we are breaking it smaller into a smaller part? Now, what do we need to do? In sword, there is a rule that when you have two numbers with the same root, you can easily add them and subtract them. Why? Because they have the same root. Now, since 7 and 5 have the same root, they can be subtracted, and that is the operation of sword. So this will now give us 7 minus 5 will give us a 2 base what? Base 2 divided by what? A 4 base what? Base 2. Now, we can reduce this further if we want. 2 here will give us 1. 2 here will give us a 2. So our solution will give us root 2 divided by what? 2 root 2. Now, do you know this is not our final solution? Now, ask me why. Now, I'll tell you the reasons. This is not going to be your final solution. Why? Because the denominator is still yet a number that is not rational. It is irrational. Now we want to make it rational in order to reduce it. And what we need to do is to rationalize. Remember, I told you something about rationalization. Now, for you to rationalize, you have to multiply the numerator and the denominator by this value. Now let's do that. So this will now give us a value like root 2 multiplied by 2 root 2 all over what? 2 root 2 multiplied by 2 root what? Root 2. Now, what would our solution be here? That will give us 2 multiplied by, now in sword, I want you to note this. Root 2, I told you this when we are discussing the keynote. Root 2 multiplied by root 2 is going to give us what? A 2. Whenever you're multiplying any number of the same root, they multiply to give you that value. So that will give us a 2 times what? Times 2 divided by 2 times 2 will give us 4 multiplied by root 2 times root 2 will give us 2. So our result here will be what? 4 divided by what? 8. So that will give us 4 divided by 8 will give us 1 over what? 2, because 4 here will give you 1 and 4 here will give you 2. So if you simplify, your final solution is going to be 1 over 2. Isn't that simple? I told you earlier on that the challenge question is going to be a little question if you take it step by step. Now, this question is one of those questions you'll be given in your JAM objective questions, in your JAM question. You just need 4 seconds to solve this. If you know the rules, you know the principles guiding sword, it won't take you 3 seconds. You're done with this question. Now, let's look at sample question 2. Now let's look at the second sample for our topic for today, which is sword. Now the second sample is you are asked to simplify 2 root 3 minus 3 all over root 2, square root of 2 plus square root of what? 3. Now recall during our keynotes, I told you something that you can be given a combined question like this, and for this you should look for the conjugate of a sword. I mentioned that during the keynote. Now we have to look for the conjugate of The conjugate of sword, root 2 plus root what? Root 3. I gave you some terms. I gave you some conjugate. And the conjugate of this will be what? Root 2 minus root what? Root 3. That's the conjugate of that sword. So what you need to do to rationalize this sword, we need to multiply the numerator and the denominator with the conjugate. So what we are going to do now is what? The rationalization of the sword. So if we rationalize that sword, we are going to have 2 root 2 minus root what? 3 multiplied by root 2 minus root 3 all divided by root what? 2 plus root 3 multiplied by root 2 minus root what? 3. Now the essence of multiplying the denominator and the numerator with the conjugate of the sword is so as to make this a rational number. Now let's go about solving it. Now simplifying this further, we are going to get this. This will be equal to 2 times 1, assuming is a 1 here, that will give you a 2. And remember, I told you that root 2 times root 2, it should be equal to what? 2. Remember that rule always. So 2 root 2 times root 2 is going to give us a 2. Now minus times minus is going to give us a plus. No, minus times plus here. This times this, then this times this will give us minus 2 root what? Root 6, right? So this will give us minus times plus will give us a minus root what? 6. Minus times minus will give us a plus root 3. Good. Now let's cross it down. This times this will give us a 2. This times this will give us minus root 6. Plus this times this will give us plus root 6. And this times this will give us a minus 3. So this will be equal to 4 into bracket minus 2 plus minus 2 root 6 minus root 6. That will give us a 3 root what? Root 6 plus what? A 3. That will be divided by, this will cut this, and this will give us a 2 minus what? 3. So this will be equal to 4 plus 3 minus 3 what? Root 6. Hope you're following us. Now this will be divided by minus what? 1. Want to simplify this further. This will give us 7 minus 3 root what? 6 divided by minus 1. This whole value divided by 1 is still what? 1. So to remove the subtraction, all we need to do is to multiply through by what? Minus. So that will give us minus into bracket. It was initially minus 7 minus 3 root what? 6. Recall, why it is minus is this negative sign is still here. So we are multiplying by subtraction so as to kill the negative sign here. So when we simplify further, we are going to get this to be equal to 7 plus 3 root what? Root 6. So our solution finally to this question is going to be the 7 plus 3 root what? 6. Now I want you to take note. Remember, when you're doing jam, you have options. So if you solve to this extent and you find out that your solution is this, good and fine. But if they break it down further, you have to reduce it down by multiplying the internals with minus so as to get this value. You might see this value, you might see this value in your option. It all depends on you. So this is a second sample question we'll be taking on solve. Now let's look at the last and final question. I hope you understand this part. Let's look at the next sample question. Now finally, let's look at the final sample question for today's topic, sword. Now if you notice, the final sample question is a question on the multiplication of these two swords. Now what we need to do, if you notice these two questions, you notice that the denominator of the second values is the same and they have root 3 as their denominator. So what we need to do is to rationalize that value first so that we can have it simplified. Now let's rationalize root 1 over root 3. Now if you rationalize 1 over root 3, it's going to give you 1 over root 3 multiplied by root what? 3 over what? Root 3. Remember I told you, if you want to rationalize a sword, you multiply the numerator and the denominator by the rational number. So that will give you equal to what? Root what? 3 divided by root 3 times root 3 will give you 3. So this is the value that will be replacing this and what? And this. So now let's rewrite that question. That will now give us what? Root 2 plus root what? 3 over 3 multiplied by root what? 2 minus root what? 3 over what? 3. So it makes it more simpler now to simplify. Now let's simplify this separately because this can be equal to divided by 1 and this can be divided by 1. Simplifying separately before we multiply, this will give us 3. 3 divided by 1 will give you what? 3 times this, that will give you 3 root what? Root 2 plus 3 divided by 3 is 1 times root 3, that will give you what? A root 3. Now I want to multiply it with same thing here, 3 into bracket. 3 divided by 3 is 3, multiplied by this, that will give you a 3 root 2 minus 3 divided by 3 is going to give you a 1, multiplied by this, that will give you a 3 root, or that will give you a root what? A root 3. Now I want to simplify this further. Now I want you to note this because some students can make this mistake out there. There's no sign in between these two values, these two swords. That simply shows you that this must multiply with this. Let's say there is an addition sign here, then you can now look for the LCM. But since there is no addition or subtraction sign here, it means this sword must multiply this whole sword. Now let's go about this. This times this now will give us what? Will give us a 9. So this will multiply everything there. That will give you 3 root 2 plus what? Root 3 multiplied by 3 root what? 2 minus what? Root 3. So this will now give us equal to this times this, that will give you 9. 3 times 3 will give you a 9. Root 2 times root 3 will give you 2. Root 2 times root 2, sorry, that will give you a 2. Remember our rule, root 2 multiplied by root 2, that will give you a 2. Now, this multiplied by this, 3 times 1 will give you 3. Root 2 times root 3, that will give you root what? 6. Now let's go to the next one. Plus root 3, 1 times 3 will give us a 3. Root 3 times 3 times 2 will give us root 6. That will give us minus times minus, plus times minus will give us a minus. 1 times this root 3 will give us a what? A 3. All divided by what? By 9. Now I hope you're following. Now with this sign here, this is a plus, this is a minus. That means this will cut off what? This. And what will remain here finally is this. This will now give us equal to 9 times 2 is 18. 18 minus what? 3 divided by what? 9 after much division. Now 18 minus 3 is going to give us, 18 minus 3 is going to give us a 15 divided by what? 9. 3 can go in this. 3 here will give you a 3. 3 here will give us a 5. So this will give us 5 divided by what? 3. So you see, our final solution is 5 divided by 3. That is what you see in your options, and then you can easily tick things as your solution. So you see how easy it can be to solve questions in Surds. I so much appreciate these 3 samples we've taken. We would have taken a lot more of sample if not for our timing for this video. But I want to assure you that you can get a handful of questions on Surds in our ebook. Feel free to go to our website, download them and practice them. See much of those questions, practice them. Alongside that, I will be giving you some quiz questions. I want you to try them. Remember, I told you that it is from solving mathematics and trying to solve mathematics that you can get to be a mathematician. There's no two ways about it. So try them, keep on solving questions on them. I mean, if you have questions that you need that are so difficult, feel free to reach out to us. We'll mentor you on such questions and then give you a good solutions to them. It's so good to see you watching our video, and I want you to try those quizzes that will be given to you at the end of this video. See them, try them, and I will see you in our next video.